So several years ago, my husband brought me the idea of buying a sawmill to use up some of the wood on our property that had died due to the beetle kill that I talked about in one of my previous videos. And it was about $10,000. Hopefully you can still hear me over the sound of the sawmill, but I'll show you how it works. So we harvested this tree off of our property. Stop working. Definitely embarking funds to getting this to work right. As I said, this is a tree that died due to beetle kill on our property, and to kind of get rid of some of the possible fire danger, we've been looking at trying to cut back on the number of dead trees back there. And so the sawmill makes it possible for us to take some of the bigger trees and turn them into wood planks, and raise them to the layer off the top, looks like, maybe. And so we bought it several years ago. The question that I had for him when he asked if I thought it was a good idea is, okay, if this doesn't work out, what's the resale value? And at the time, this probably would have been about 2018 or so. At the time, he says, I think it's pretty good. A lot of these are, being resold without the price that people are. Okay, let's go ahead. Of course it's windy. Now I'm covered in sawdust, but we will be pulling a plank off and setting it to the side, and then we'll cut both sides of it to kind of make it more rectangular, make the edges a little smoother. So, as I said, he decided that, well, it'd be a good idea for us to be able to do this. We'll go ahead and make this work. And we tried it out, and it actually worked really great. And in fact, I'll point you over here. That building over there, that covers the water tank that provides water for the lodge down on my brother's property. It was created entirely out of wood that was sourced from our the back of our property, and we built that a few years ago to cover the tank so that the tank wouldn't grow lots of algae. It also protects the tank so that it doesn't weather as much in the sun. So I'll take you across the dam and let's take a look at what our plans are here. I mentioned that we are looking to recycle the old trailer frame that was for a house trailer that my parents lived in and I grew up in on this property. And so trying to reuse the frame so that we have a way to cross the dam and get to the other side without going off kind of a real precipitous ledge or having to go into really mucky territory certain times of the year. So you can see the trailer frame back there. And then yesterday we worked on cutting these planks to create the bridge. So it's going to be nice and even on both sides when we're done. So right now we're just putting them down to see how many more that we need to do. The white around it is electrical fence to keep the horses off of it while it's being built, but the goal is to eventually have it completely across there so that we can take the sawmill and move it over to that end of the property where it's a little bit more protected out of the elements. Right now, obviously in the hot sun, we found that it is not real pleasant milling this in the hot sun. So kind of just looking to put it back in the area where it's a little bit easier to get the trees to it and to stay out of the sun when we're milling in the middle of the summer. So if you look at the wood, you can see some of the blue stained pine in it. So obviously not a real big consideration for what we're doing with it for the bridge, but my husband has also taken some of the wood that he's found back there and kind of he made a little table for our entryway. He made a couple of cutting boards. So also has some, kind of aesthetically pleasing. It's a pretty soft wood, so you can't do a lot with it in terms of really hard type of wood type of things, like, a lot of furniture. But there will probably be in our cabin several different pieces that are sourced from this wood if he has time to make it, because, he's going to be working 2 jobs next year. So we'll see kind of what he has time to build out of it, but just kind of taking those little logs over there and turning them into these prints.
So here's another piece of the process. The logs that you put up onto the mill end up being quite heavy, and so when we purchased this mill, since it's a mobile mill, it's pretty high up off the ground also. So along with the mill, purchased these ramps and a little manual winch. So here's Jenny getting ready to actually roll this log up onto the mill. So you take the cable and go over the top of the log, then around and down underneath, which will actually make it so the log just kind of rolls real nice. As you can see, one of the big fights is getting the logs so that they so you can get the cable underneath.
And when we move this up to its normal spot, it's a little bit easier because it's a little flatter.
Right. Yeah, we're not in the best spot here, but she showed you in another video, or she will anyway, that we've got the bridge where all of this wood will go onto that bridge. And some of these projects or jobs have become hers, so I almost never actually lift a log onto the mill. Seems like I'm always running around doing some other project while she's doing this. So at this point, hooks a crank into here, and she will be able to turn around and just real easily slip this log right up onto the mill. If we were doing this production for sale or something else, they make these mills much larger that then have all hydraulic controls, and they're pretty sweet, but they're also pretty pricey. So in our case, this has been a perfect size machine for us, and as you can see, she locked it because things went a little askew, and she'll go over and just have to slip things around, re-level them out, and be able to finish the process. You can put an awfully doggone big log onto this with this crank and system though. It's kind of amazing how big and heavy of a log you can put. The mill's rated to go just a little over 16 feet. I almost never mill that long due to you have to have really nice straight logs that are pretty big, and we don't have use for that long of timbers. In fact, this one we're putting on here is way longer than I need, since I'm only actually needing like just over 6 feet, and this is probably closer to 10. So as you can see, pretty simple process, but as we've got with anything, just takes a little bit of time to set up and